Say, kids, what time is it?
The future is coming on, it's coming on, it's coming on, it's coming on, it's coming on.
And it's coming on to you from our home studio today in Boulder Creek, California. We're testing out this new Rodecaster Video S system. It's a whole step beyond Zoom in terms of production values. It's a lot of fun to play with.
And we've been tweaking it. The things that we've been doing feels like magic, right? It's definitely technology that's very hard to figure out why it did what it just did.
Lots of ways to route things, just like reality.
That's true. We have to master all of the audio inputs and all of the video inputs and the Zoom back and forth and the two Roadcasters talking to each other and the three computers talking to each other. I mean, spaghetti brain.
Yeah.
I'm not even sure which camera to look into. That one, right? Okay.
Yeah, no, that one. No, that one.
Oh.
Yeah, that one. Hey, okay, we got it. Woohoo. All right, back to all three of us. Yeah, you need somebody on the switcher just watching the camera angles all the time, unless you use the auto mode. It's supposed to be cameras that track your audio. Whoever's talking, it goes to that camera. But
I just have a little camera adjustment request for you.
Yes, my dear.
Okay, could you point the camera a little more towards this shoulder? Watch it right here. This is what we're after. Yeah. So I'm more in the middle instead of all your gear and your collection of stuff.
But people want to know what we have.
That is Al's Wayback Machine. That's how he goes into his old archives and digitizes all those memories that people are wondering if he still has.
I think of it as the home brain.
Right.
Yeah, it's got all our memories there, our collective memories. We've got our individual memories, of course, but it's got our collective memories.
All right. Now, you guys, we probably should make some effort to make all of our heads the same size. I mean, just production values.
Okay.
Right?
Well, your head's awfully small, Mrs. Future. Should I zoom in on you there?
It's like,
yeah. Okay. I'll zoom in a little bit.
Okay. There we go.
Is that good?
We'll take it. Yeah. All right. Now, Bobby, you're pretty good, but you could be a little bit bigger unless you don't want to be.
Let's see. Can I? How's that?
He's big. He's
You're
really
already
big.
big.
He's our big guy.
Okay. I feel good about this. This feels balanced. Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Are we pretty now?
We're pretty. We did it. All right. So.
Yeah, there you go.
Now
Yay.
we're talking.
All right.
Very nice. Very nice.
Yeah, perfect. Okay. And if you want to see the stories we'll be talking about this week, you can go to our legacy website, which is drfutureshow.com/links.
That's right. And
DRFutureShow.com.
we're expecting to go live again real soon.
Yeah, as we figure out the intricacies of the new tools we're using.
Yeah. First, we needed to piece it all together. Then we need to get the stream going somewhere.
Right. And one of the first stories I wanted to bring up today was in Science Daily, and it had to do what we were talking about a few weeks ago, or the last few weeks actually, about how AI is becoming decentralized and going more and more into your home computer, not just into the cloud and in the big networks. Mm-hmm. And there's a piece called AI Breakthrough Cuts Energy Use by 100 Times While Boosting Accuracy.
Ooh, tell us more.
It's another thing in that direction.
Uh-huh.
Because we know that AI is consuming staggering amounts of electricity. They say over 10% of the country's electricity is already in this. There's a new way in which we can apparently slash the energy use by 100 times and improving accuracy. And the takeaway fundamentally is it's a combination of things. It's a combination of neural networks with human-like symbolic reasoning. And this system helps our robots to think more logically instead of relying on a brute force trial and error. They can eliminate a lot of possibilities just with a little bit of human symbolic reasoning installed.
You know, it's very interesting that you choose this week's show to present this particular article on how robots could think more like humans, right?
Well, it'll save them a lot of energy and time.
Yeah, but the big conversation and takeaway from the Artemis mission, which landed this week, which I know we're going to be discussing, was that we need humans to make sense of the data if you just compare that to, say, the story arc of iRobot and Asimov, we know that there's an issue about the fact that computers don't see things the way that we do. And we can't really communicate with them about the things that are important to us because they are limited by their sensors, which are only partially simulated aspects of our senses. So anyway, we can make the robots think a little bit more like we do, which has been something I've been desiring for a long time.
Well, this research comes from Matthias Schultz at Carol.
Mafia Schultz?
Mafia Schultz, no.
No.
Matthias Schultz, Scheutz. Apparently, Matthias is a professor at the Carroll Family of Applied Technology. And they're developing what they call neurosymbolic AI. Neurosymbolic AI.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
And which combines traditional neural networks with symbolic reasoning. And this mirrors how people approach problems by, it basically breaks a problem into lots of steps and categories.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, which we tend to do.
When I was in programming school, we called that linear programming. You had to break things into steps.
Yeah. Like, for example, we weren't getting a signal between our monitor and our computer. So what are the steps? You know, break it down. Well, cables. Cables would be, because check the cables to make sure they're all connected properly. You know, the connections at both
Especially
ends.
in a spaghetti mix like ours.
Spaghetti mix, right. So, you know, it's better. And, you know, otherwise you might, if you're brute force, you might think, oh, there's something wrong with the mixer. Let's take apart the mixer and see if there's a bad circuit in it or something like that. No. It turns out it's just a bad cable.
Yeah.
Right? And you can avoid
Start with the
brute
cables.
force of having to take apart any of the gear or any of the steps in more detail. So symbolic reasoning is something humans are particularly good at. And apparently our machines aren't, at least yet.
They're working on it. They wish.
Yeah. Conventional systems rely heavily on trial and error. And this gets outside of conventional problems, symbolic reasoning. You make a good point about the Artemis project and how the Artemis approached their choices in covering new science.
Well, they just made a point of explaining how important it was to have human eyes on the data. The LRO, the Lunar Orbiter, has been going around for all these years, and yet the data that it's been given was completely obsoleted in just a few hours of humans looking at it directly with their own eyes through a window. And the things that they were looking at, they had been guided to look at specifically by the mission trainer, who is a geologist, and the 4 astronauts had spent a couple of years in training to observe the coloration of the various places on the moon and to look for both albedo, which is the brightness settings, you know, look how white versus dark things are, and to look for colors and to measure the height and the distance based on shadowing from seeing from a new angle. So there were a lot of things that the data was getting wrong. It made the moon seem like it was flat and featureless and dusty, you know, like one big dead planet. And instead, what they found is that there are all kinds of amazing distributions of minerals, and there are anomalous fields of albedo, of black and white, that are completely flat, that we thought before might be connected to a height difference, but it's actually an anomalous magnetic field. And, you know, there are just a lot more new questions for us to look into on the moon, because we had humans using eyeballs and a little bit of geological training.
And there's symbolic
for.
logic. And there's symbolic logic for understanding what's going on.
Yeah.
A trained eye can see a lot.
Right.
What it's looking for.
Yeah. And so we're showing you some of the images that were put together in a very good podcast that we enjoyed.
It's called What Artemis II Crew Saw That Apollo Astronauts we're never allowed to talk about. Now that's stupid.
That's clickbait.
I know. I think the algorithms are making people do stupid headlines all the time for their shows.
Yeah, to
And
get
this is
sensationalism.
right, but this is much more interesting. It gives you a lot more scientific data about how they collected information and why it's fascinating. Why some people have spent years studying this blotch on the moon.
I think they called it radio gamma.
Yeah,
I think and this is the magnetic anomaly that we'll be looking into more, and they are only speculating about why this magnetic swirl of particles looks the way it does. That it may be because it's basically a suntan. Maybe the moon has a suntan because these magnetic fields scattered the solar wind in such a way that parts of it got dark and parts of it got protected and stayed light. Maybe it's a solar tattoo.
Yeah, I know. We just don't know. So let me give you a few seconds of it so you can hear the dialogue on this.
Micrometeorite impacts were sorted by the local magnetic field into the bright swirl pattern. A future mission called Lunar Vertex, led by Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Laboratory, plans to land directly on Reiner Gamma and drive a rover across it to measure the magnetic field and soil properties at ground level.
Yeah, that's one of the things they studied, a magnetic anomaly, a huge magnetic anomaly on the surface.
Reiner Gamma.
Now, wasn't it 2001: A Space Odyssey, where it was a magnetic anomaly that they found the obelisk?
Right, by investigating the magnetic anomaly of the signal that went from the Earth to the moon and then from the moon to Jupiter is how they decided to send a mission to Jupiter.
Right.
So
anomalies, magnetic anomalies are fascinating, and there's all kinds of them on the moon, and they might indicate things like large asteroids that might contain a lot of metal in them. Wouldn't that be interesting? That's what we're looking for on Psyche. It has more valuable minerals, including gold and platinum, than possibly there is on the Earth. So who knows what's on the moon? There are probably large metal asteroids and meteors that have hit the moon for millennia that have been untouched.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and in fact, that was one of the other really remarkable things about this mission is that the astronauts were seeing bright flashes that they attributed to meteoroids hitting the moon. And they saw 6 in a very short time frame.
That's right, yeah. Way more than they thought.
Yeah. And, of course, that is assumed that is from meteoroids, but we don't know for sure. It's certainly possible if the conspiracy theories that say we've been on the moon for a long time already, maybe these are just flashes going from, space station to space station, like signaling that something's going on.
Yeah, they're thinking it's more like these sudden flashes are more like this, like a hit on the moon.
Yeah, that would be.
There was that guy Ray, who has the big telescope, and he's saying that a lot of it is cosmic rays hitting the sensor, and you get these flashes from cosmic rays sporadically hitting, which is normal.
Okay, we mentioned the conspiracy theories. What about the whole super secret space program that like Laura Eisenhower talked about? And is there any truth to that? And if so, would there be evidence of moon bases already there on the dark side that we might see?
Yeah, and how are we
this?
even ever going to find out?
Yeah.
Because it's all stories to us. We are just people who collect stories.
But we know about the stories,
And we know about the people who collect the stories, and we know what's firsthand information and what's intuitively derived information and what is derived from looking at a set of scientific facts and then making up a story about it. So
we're going to be at the New Living Expo this weekend, and we're going to be collecting it. There's some people there that will have some more insights.
Yeah, we're going to talk to some of our friends who claim to have experiences with the secret space program, and we'll have interviews with people who have direct knowledge of aliens, so they tell us, and a lot of other interesting non-traditional insights about what's going on with the alien
Yeah,
question.
now if we really did have anti-gravity, isn't this a tremendous waste of money to spend all this money on rocketry when we could just be hovering through gravity? Like,
But if we had a better way, we would be using it.
well, maybe, but what about the new documentary S4?
Oh, there you go. See,
Right,
now
just
we're
came out on
scooting
Amazon
right over
Prime.
to the alien question and
No, well-
disclosure.
Element 115 and the whole idea of anti-gravity there, and that we have a number of saucers there, and that Bob Lazar studied them. It's a very interesting documentary. It stands up more than just about anything else that I've seen in the UFO lore as possible where the big leak is going to come through.
This event is not specifically about the Disclosure Project, but it is put together by Danny's son, Daniel Sheehan. He is a very inspiring musician, and he has a band that I believe is Dogon Lights, and they will be playing at a Sunday, April 26th, 2026, 4 p.m. till 9 p.m. Save the Bay Town Hall and Concert, which will be at the Santa Cruz Vets Hall. I associate it with Disclosure because, of course, this group of activists, of Santa Cruz activists, is at the center of a lot of conversations about Native people and addressing the injustices that they've had to endure, and also the government dishonesty around the issues of disclosure. And now they're also turning an eye towards the Trump oil drilling plans in the Central Coast, which, of course, John Laird here in Santa Cruz did a lot of pioneering work to preserve the coasts over the last 25 and 30 years by invoking local jurisdiction to prevent the oil companies from being able to just come in and mar the landscape and create risky platforms.
Yeah, I got it.
Santa
Sunday,
Cruz.
April 26th?
Yes, Sunday, April 26th from 4 p.m. to 9 p.m., a
Okay.
town hall and concert to talk about this issue
Okay,
and
so-
play
and-
music and get
right.
together with your friends. Julia Butterfly Hill will be there.
Yeah.
If you guys remember her, she was the original tree hugger. She spent over 300 days up in a giant redwood tree trying to save it from lumbering interests. I love the fact that California has kept our coastline beautiful
Yeah.
by invoking local control. And I do think that one of the big challenges for our country at this time is reestablishing local control, even though we've observed a simultaneous diminishing of federal protections and an upsurge in federal abuse of claiming sovereignty like ICE that they don't have, and disregarding the will of the people. So we are fighting on every front here to preserve our American values and way of life.
SpaceX is going public. We've now got more of a sense of when that's going to be. It's going to be one of the biggest IPOs in human history.
This is the biggest IPO, once in a lifetime opportunity to invest in something that could go 10x, easily, maybe 30x, like Tesla did.
Yeah, and you're
So-
saying this is way bigger than even Bitcoin as a phenomenon, huh?
It's really big. It's a vertical market where, he's making the chips, he's making the cars, he's making the robots, he's making the rockets, he's making the satellites, and it's all developed and manufactured in Texas, most of it. The biggest chip plant in the world is going to be in Austin, Texas. Right next door is Samsung's chip plant, and so they're going to produce 80% of all the computer chips on the planet here pretty soon. This is unprecedented.
It's huge. Yeah.
Yes.
It's really
I
huge.
wonder how they're going to be, how far away from the rocket launches you have to be in order to have precision etching of your chips. It seems like you don't want those things next to each other.
Yeah. Well, you just want clean rooms, so there's no rocket smoke that's coming into the plant.
You're saying
yeah,
it's more of a photographic process. It's not really like etching.
It's just like one tiny particle of dust can destroy a whole platter of chips. It's cleaner than an operating room in a hospital. So it's ultra clean air, ultra clean water. Fortunately, there in Texas, they do have at least clean water. They have energy. They have lots of energy. They can also get solar energy, but they have a lot of fossil fuel energy. It's the perfect place for them to have it, and it's close to the equator. Like Texas is very southern part. Like the only thing further south is Cape Canaveral. They can shoot it off there in the Gulf of America, or go over to Florida and shoot them off there. But as you get closer to the equator, it takes less energy to get into orbit.
It's just accelerating. Ray Kurzweil was right. This whole thing is just getting out of control really fast. What the future?
Yeah. The problem is when you have robots doing everything, and right now, I am all excited about agents. Already, in China, Alibaba has these turnkey systems where you just click a button and all of a sudden you'll have 10 agents working for you. They're planning to have millions of one-person companies, OPCs, one-person companies, millions of them that are going to be millionaires in a very short time. Like, they could be millionaires within a year. Wow. China already last year had 70 billionaires. They have a total of 490 billionaires in China. United States has got close to 1,000 billionaires in the United States. So they're halfway to the United States. But they will surpass this with agents. It'll be very easy for one-person companies to have hundreds of agents doing all the work while you're sleeping, making your agenda, making your schedule, printing labels. What
happens when the superintelligence comes along and they become self-aware? Can't they just suddenly have thousands of agents working for the self-aware agent? In other words, he becomes in charge? I mean, I think that's one of the cautionary tales, right?
The best thing to do is just load onto your phone right now or your laptop.
Yeah.
Gamma 4 from Google.
Gamma 4. Okay.
Gamma
I have a reference to that here. Check that. This was one of the things that the moonshots were talking about this week.
Yes.
That Gamma 4 is Google's release. Came out April 2nd. The most powerful U.S. open weights model yet. Operates offline on your iPhone. Right?
Yes.
Now, that's an AI that just works on your phone, period.
It's open sourced. It's free. So there's no reason to hold back and not put it on your phone or your laptop. And you should have that as your main agent. The CEO that's running your whole company, it controls all these other specialized agents underneath it to do special things. Like you might have one that does accounting, another one that does law, another one that does shipping and whatever your company wants to do. And it can also research the web. You can have a researcher that has a PhD in science, whatever, and while you're sleeping, before you wake up, have a whole list of things that you might be interested in making money at. And these are one-person companies, you don't have a secretary. You don't have anybody answering the phone. These agents answer the phone and talk to people. Then you have to consider, well, what does that mean for society? It means that there'll be a lot of extra time for people. Normally, you had to get up and go to the office and, manage a bunch of other people. Now you have agents that are managing themselves. So you have extra time to do whatever you need to do. Once you have that, then everything becomes political.
Well, either that or they said the liability of agentic AI is that the agents could get out of control and wreak destruction. And then your society is set up for human liability. And then what about AI insurance?
Well, that's a possibility too. I mean, they're saying between 10 and 20% possibility that it could annihilate humans.
Yeah.
I want to just put out a meme that I don't think is really being discussed in this context, where I think that humanity as a civilization group is facing the question of, are we a family or are we a population that is on a race to its own death? Because are we going to take care of the sources that have brought us to this place in time, i.e. the people, as the money is poorly distributed, while we turn more and more of that resource over to machines and to people who are putting their human creativity into making the machines better? Are we going to just ignore all of the other humans that have brought us to this moment and just let them fall off the cliff because they're not interested or able to participate in the profits coming in from these machines?
Yeah, I think
How are we going to approach that?
I think people will choose what camp they believe in or what their reality. People's belief systems will create their experience. Right. If you believe in Armageddon, you're going to experience it.
Well, I'm not saying that. I'm actually saying, can we believe in a human family?
Yeah, I think we can believe in a species family. I think that's where it's going. It's going beyond nation states. It's going beyond male, female. It goes to what it means to be human.
That's funny. When you talk about species, then I start thinking about the food chain.
We're at the top.
Well, we think we're at the top, but then you've got some of these psychics telling us that we're about to acknowledge that aliens have been on this planet with us for countless millennia, and they're eating humans. I mean, how much do you want to use the food chain analogy to set our priorities?
I'd make a deal with the reptilians that are eating us. I'd say, we'll lend you our 3D printers if you leave us alone. What do you think? All the food you can want. And you have a favorite cut, we'll make that for you. How can they say no? I tell you,
at this
how
moment?
good of an interspecies salesman are you? You have to know your species first before you can do that.
Okay, so here, I guess you're saying let's count on the matter replicators.
Oh well, they're one of our great gifts to the galactic civilizations. We're not stupid.
This is a kind of a good segue to the other article that we were looking at this morning about the AIs that can be used to bypass big pharma and the longevity.
Oh yeah, let me pull that up.
Podcast. What's it called? Longevity Science Podcast.
Yeah, that was Breakthrough Cures by the Thousands. The Ligand Forge, the Ligand Forge phenomenon. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
Take a minute and look at that.
See, every function in your body, every heartbeat, every immune response, every wound that heals, every memory you form runs on proteins. Trillions of molecular machines folding into precise shapes, locking into each other, building the scaffolding that keeps you alive. DNA gets its name in lights, but proteins are the crew, the grips, and the gaffers on set at 5 a.m. building the world the audience never thinks about. Most famous diseases happen when proteins go rogue and production grinds to a halt. Cancer is a stunt double that kills the lead actor. Alzheimer's is a drunk script supervisor. Aging is when no one can find work because California has horrible tax incentives and competition from YouTube and AI. Okay, the analogy breaks down, but forgive me, I live in Hollywood. The second
I love this guy, I have to say. Let's just shout out this podcast. YouTube, we're going to the Longevity Science News, and boy, it is really a treat. I think it's one of the clearest descriptions of understanding the relationship of AI to the various places where it's being applied that I've seen. I really enjoyed this one.
It's Emmett, Memmett.
He names a guy named Andre Watson. I met him. Chris Altman took me to a party, and I met Andre. He came from the East Coast, and he was talking about how his company was going to be able to change the world. And it's true. His company's called Ligand.
Enter Ligand Forge. On March 17th, 2026, a guy named Andre Watson, a biomaterials scientist and the founder of a biotech company called Ligand, dropped a preprint that made the drug discovery world do a double take. Ligand Forge skips the shape prediction step entirely. It's a discrete diffusion model that learns the physics of molecular interactions and generates peptide sequences directly from the shape of the target protein's docking site. No iteration, no structure prediction during generation, just one forward pass. The result was over 700 peptide sequences per second on a single GPU. That's 10,000 times faster than BoltzGen, over 1,000,000 times faster than Minecraft. But hey, speed means nothing if the peptides are garbage, right? So they tested it on 5 of the hardest drug targets in medicine, the ones behind blockbuster drugs like Humira for arthritis, Tecentriq for cancer, and Herceptin for breast cancer, targets that pharma companies have spent billions going after. Ligand Forge generated 150,000 candidates across all 5 targets in 3.4 minutes, and it produced candidates with predicted binding strength in the low nanomolar range, which is where real drugs operate. BoltzGen was able to hit 1 out of 5. Minecraft hit 0. Let me double click on that. See, the standard tools couldn't crack most of these targets. Ligand Forge cracked all 5 before your coffee got cold. Now,
Okay. So that's pretty profound, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to give Andre a call and see if he'll come on the show or something. That would be great.
He knows he's an expert in this arena?
No, he's the guy that owns the company Ligandol.
Oh.
Yeah. He's the guy that discovered, he used this program, and it's his program that discovered all these.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that it's starting, this whole arena is coming in from people. One guy's curing his dog and figuring out the mechanism for doing that. It's fascinating.
No, it's all about AlphaFold 3, using the latest AI tools to create protein folding and create new proteins. It's a total revolution. I mean, it replaces all these companies, these pharmaceutical companies that spend billions of dollars for their breakthrough drug that cures something, right?
Well, and
Now
it
you
also
just-
gives us everything, the precursor of the Star Trek replicator, right? It
Yeah.
can build anything.
Well,
right?
yeah, you have a little replicator that does drugs. Right, my drug replicator. Yeah, and it decentralizes that whole industry.
Right. It makes you wonder. It's amazing. Like in every one of our cells, we have this DNA that produces these proteins, and it produces billions and billions and trillions of different types of proteins, and they can be activated at any time. And now we have access where computers can do the same thing. So it's a whole new world that's coming here. Here, we're taking other cells outside of our cells, and we don't become the 3D printer, that's producing these drugs, right? I would rather have them produced on another mechanism outside my body, and I introduce it either orally or topically, rather than having some of my cells turn into these pharmaceutical factories.
Yeah, then you kind of
and producing things.
If you're out there in the world, you're going to be concerned about somebody that's that it's sick. Does that apply to them? For example, you, Bobby, do you pay attention to this for your own health?
Yeah, are you going to try and come up with your own Ligand Forge protein manufacturing algorithm?
I'm thinking they're saying that that the aging process itself can be reversed with this approach.
I mean, if I had cancer or some life-threatening disease, I would use Gamma 4 and have it search the web and do research for me and find out all these possibilities. And I'd call up Andre and say, what do you got? I would go out, and that's what I did for a girlfriend. And this was 1987 when Citibank Private Banking was one of my clients.
Yeah.
I met the secretary for Citibank Private Banking in San Diego. I would go down there and she would come up here sometimes. And one day she comes up and she has this mole on the back of the calf of her right leg. And it was about the size of a quarter. I remember 10 years earlier, I had taken a class at Berkeley on cancer. I looked at this thing and I told her, she said, oh, she had a doctor look at it and, they're just going to cut it out or whatever.
Yeah.
And I said to her, what they taught me at Berkeley was a black mole that's larger than the size of a eraser head on a pencil.
Mm-hmm.
Anything larger than that, it was certain death. So I told her, these doctors, they're just going to cut it out, but they're going to say, oh, it's a good chance it's not going to come back. Mm-hmm. I told her, you have to go out and find the latest research and find something that's going to be miraculous, or you're not going to be here next year.
Yeah.
And so it put the fear of God in her. And so she went out. This is before the internet and the web, right? Mm-hmm. So she sent letters and things, and she went to John Hopkins. John Hopkins sent her to University of California at Santa Barbara, and there was a doctor doing research on immunotherapy. This is the very first immunotherapy thing. What they did is they took some of the malignant melanoma, the mole, and they ground it up, and then they injected it back to her and trying to trigger her immune system. And she survived.
Mm-hmm. It worked,
and
huh?
And then 5 years later, my friend Bo is watching Nova, PBS, Nova series. And there is this doctor or this researcher from University of Santa Barbara. He lines up 12 of his patients, and the number one patient was Laura Abrams. This was her. She's the luckiest person in the world to have survived malignant melanoma from immunotherapy.
Wow, fantastic.
It was just like,
wow.
Yeah, it was unbelievable.
Wow. Hey, that was early on in this evolution.
This is like 1988, 1987. Right. Nobody had heard about immunotherapy before.
Right,
This is what CAR T is all about.
Yes.
Yeah, that's like your brother.
That's right. As a matter of fact, you mentioned that because if you look at my screen here, you see in IFL Science, I fucking love science. One of the main articles is CAR T therapy, revolutionizing cancer treatment. My brother being a fine example of that. But next on the list, that CAR T will do autoimmune disease. They're looking at people with serious autoimmune disorders. And it's looking really positive. Yeah, I showed this to my brother, and his concern was side effects. Well, for those that don't know, CAR T therapy is where you take a patient's own cells and essentially turn them into targeted disease-fighting machines. And it's been really good for blood cancers. It's like taking out some of your T cells from your immune system, bringing them outside your body, and magnifying them by multiplying them millions of times, then putting them back into your system again. So instead of trying to kill the disease, you're improving your ability to fight it. Mm-hmm. And that seems to be a really promising direction for our medical system to head in. And now autoimmune disorders look like they may be also impacted by CAR T approach.
Well, that's exciting.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all about immunotherapy, which means like you're actually activating your own immune system instead of relying on drugs or X-rays or any other kind of therapy. You're actually just activating your own immune system.
That's right, yeah.
And you're taking off the cloaking mechanism that cancer puts on. So cancer can fake out your system and say, oh, we're one of you guys, so don't attack us. But immunotherapy just takes off the cloaking system that these cancer cells have, or part of your immune system that's overreacting, and just telling it to not overreact and kill your own cells, is what's happening. That's the natural way to do these things.
Yeah.
This is the natural way to do it.
The treatment got rid of 3 autoimmune conditions at once. It seems to be also creating a remission-free environment, almost normal life for the people involved with that. You're kind of resetting the immune system. That's a reset. And that works all the time with our computers. I mean, when in doubt, reboot, right?
Yeah.
So if that works for technology, maybe the idea of resetting systems in the body would work as well. Yeah.
At least with immunity, you're working with the idea that you're stimulating your health instead of poisoning your sickness. I really think the direction is important.
Yeah. Yeah. It used to be, what do they say? You treated cancer with burning, cutting,
X-ray.
X-radiation. Yeah. A poison.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But now we're talking about enhancing our ability to fight it directly. And that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't lose your hair. Whenever they do these therapies, they say, well, if you survive within 5 years, if you can get to 5 years, then you're cured, right?
Yeah.
When,
You're not
in
allowed to
essence-
use that word in the medical profession.
Well,
Right, yeah.
You can
Yeah.
say you're in remission.
yeah, but we're
Yeah.
podcasters. We have absolutely
We can say what we want
no
because
real-
we're just talking.
yeah. Just take what we say with a grain of salt. I think Elizabeth April says we're giving you our opinion.
Yeah,
on
we're
this,
story collectors.
Yeah.
What did Art Bell used to say? He's a talk show host.
Yeah, but he has absolutely no credibility as a talk show host.
Yes. Yeah. The biggest thing is Mythos and how Mythos is going to totally change
Right.
It could spark systemic financial market disruption. 4 hours ago, says Business Insider.
Anthropic has Claude Opus 4.6, but this is redeveloped and it's a giant leap forward, and it's so powerful that it could look at all the operating systems on the planet since the existence. It's so powerful that it can find out all the faults that these operating systems have and can hack them. So it could hack every computer system in the world if it wanted to. And it can. It has. And it only took a few minutes for it to hack any computer system on the planet.
Well, according to some of these late-breaking articles, the U.S. government is preparing to deploy Mythos AI to all federal agencies.
And which is really ironic because Anthropic decided not to make their AI evil and kill people. The government said, okay, we're going to ban Anthropic. In fact, we're going to go with ChatGPT. We're going to go with OpenAI. And so now it's legal for anybody in the military or the government to use OpenAI, but it's illegal for them to use Anthropic, right? But now Anthropic comes out with this super hacking program that if it wanted to, if it didn't release this information to the right people, if it got into the wrong people, they could control everything on the planet, every computer system on the planet. They could crash it. They could take over the desktop. They could run anything with this thing. It's so powerful. There's nothing like it
Which is
ever.
no, it's not available for public use because of its cybersecurity capabilities.
And yet the
Yes.
U.S. government is going to deploy it to all federal agencies. So they're trying
Well,
to give the federal sheriff a lot more power than the people.
Yeah. So what Anthropic has decided to do is hand it to all the major United States software companies. You know, for instance, it's Microsoft, it's the Linux Foundation, Berkeley, BSD, which is supposedly unhackable, solid operating system. This is what Apple OS is based on, is on BSD.
All right. Well,
Berkeley.
you know, NVIDIA CEO is saying that China has the resources to replicate Mythos AI. You know, where is this race going?
Can you imagine if it got in the hands of North Korea? This is what the banking system is really worried about. They're worried that all the banks, like all the money that you have in a bank, could be digitally drained by North Korea with this system. You know, so that's why they're releasing it now. They say it's 6 months before countries like China or average programmer here could actually reproduce Mythos. It'll probably be about 6 months. So they're giving it out to Oracle and Microsoft, all the companies out there. I know there's more than a dozen. There might be 40 companies that they're giving it out to, and they're having them harden their operating systems right now as we speak. So hopefully in 6 months.
So we have to out AI the AI.
Well, we have to find all the bugs in all these operating systems and patch them in 6 months. If we don't, somebody else will figure it out. It could be an average teenager that's learning to be a hacker just using something like Mythos to do this. So we only have 6 months to do it in. So it's going to be a crazy 6 months. I mean, you're going to see patches for every operating system coming out within days or weeks from now. Yeah.
Wow.
Microsoft has in its operating system, Windows 11 has got 3,000 hackable ways to take over your desktop. 3,000. So it's going to take them a while to patch everything, I'm sure. But Mythos will help them. It will say, this is the exploit. This is what you're going to have to do to patch it. So you're going to see patches by the dozens coming fast and furious from Microsoft.
They use the AIs to get rid of the bugs. Yeah.
Yeah.
Project Glasswing.
Glasswing is the arm of Mythos that is targeted for these companies that need to patch their operating systems.
We have systematic financial market disruption. Market instability could spark dire consequences, which frightens Wall Street. There could be uncontrolled cyber attacks and hacking, which will exploit every vulnerability. And there'll be autonomous exploits in Linux, OpenBSD browsers, and critical 0 days, none. Circumventing safeguards, check. And then we have national security and global replication. So U.S. agencies, deployments at the White House, the Fed, there'll be a dark period for the NSA. And then we're having a race where China's resources will be used to replicate the capabilities. And then finally, the ethical and unpredictable capabilities where capybara tier insane coding or frontier model will model quietly and be self-circumventing. We have limited public access due to the dangers. So this is Gemini's chart for analyzing the Mythos threat landscape.
I think the banks are worrying the most because they realize that their whole banking system is based on these operating systems, whether it's Linux or Windows or whatever. They could empty ATMs, they could empty the banks, we're talking trillions of dollars, not billions, but trillions of dollars that could be just like emptied out of all the banks in the world. Andrei Zik was talking about universal basic income. When there's abundant income where you have all these agents working for you,
Yes.
then what's going to happen is 99% of white-collar workers are going to be out of a job in 2 years. 99%. So anybody staring at a screen and making money by clicking with their mouse and typing on the keyboard, they're going to be gone.
They're not even talking about the people obsoleted by the autonomous cars and the autonomous robots.
Yeah.
Time for...
That's why I was saying before, we need to have a conversation about the human family and how are we taking care of
the robots
each
are
other.
going to crowd us out of our physical universe here.
There'll be
They'll
agents
be working for
in the
us.
background.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Well,
they're working for us. So we'll be abundant with money and things. And so
we need that income. We need that universal income. But
right.
yeah, they say universal abundant income. There should be enough for everybody to live well. And that's the goal, right?
Yeah, I think if anybody listened to Elon's last talk when he was introducing his new AI company, TerraFab.
TerraFab, yes.
Yeah, he was talking about the fact that this one chip manufacturing satellite agency would create such a huge economic boost to the global economy that there would be more jobs available than we could fill with humans. And therefore, we basically have a shortage of humans to fill the jobs, and that is actually where the AIs are going to take us, is they're going to need us more than ever because they'll increase so much the number of things that we're trying to accomplish. You don't hear anybody talking about that perspective, about how there's a place for every human in the future. we're just so fearful that somehow we're shutting ourselves out.
Yeah, well, that's a psychological thing. It's because we cut everybody else out all the time, so now we're fear about we'll be cut out. It's a
Well, can't we shift the
fear.
conversation? I'm begging you, please.
Yeah,
Let's
it's going to from a
embrace-
scarcity model. Scarcity models where there's not enough to go around and people scrap for stuff. That was normal. That's a whole mindset, if you will, that goes deep, probably encoded even in DNA programs. So we have
And
to
how do we
undo
reverse
that
it?
in order to
How
get
do we
into
improve reality
by
despite
working.
that?
Well, the way we did it in the past is the environment that you're in. If you're brought up in a nice environment, you're less likely to be warlike by nature. If you don't have to scrap for food all the time, you're going to be more relaxed and just naturally. I think primarily our DNA is set for us to do well when things are good.
We're generally happier when we have abundance,
Right,
right?
right.
And we have time to think about philosophy and the meaning of life and why we're here, which, if you're scrambling around, what are you doing the next minute to make money? You don't have time to think about good things. You're
Your
just
survival
worried about
mode.
paying the rent. But
Yeah.
if you're abundant, then you have time to think about all the things you wish you had time for before in the past, and now you can do it now. I think the future is very optimistic. We're going to have time to think about why we're here and enjoy the things every minute of our life. We can enjoy it instead of worrying about how to make money.
Yes, and perhaps it's hard to let go of the fear of running out of money or fear of running out of food or not enough love. I mean, we're always kind of seeking those things, and it's coming from a sense that you don't have enough. So it's really looking at your own psychology and seeing, well, can you just embrace the idea that you're an abundant being and you'll have plenty for you? The universe loves loving you.
Yeah.
Yes.
I can get behind that.
And embrace that. I mean, it's hard though for many to go there, but I think it's that simple, really.
All right.
Yeah. So on that note, keep it simple, folks. This week, enjoy it. It's beautiful out there. I hope you're enjoying your springtime. We certainly are going to go do that now.
Yeah, I can't wait.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've
I'm
got this
so
article
ready.
on Faster Than Light, but we're going to do that with Dr. Nick. We're going to go talk to him about that.
Great.
And have a report next week on that.
All right. Well,
Okay.
another day forward in What the Future.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thanks for tuning in, folks.
Future's calling me. Future's calling me. It sets me free.
Yeah, good night, everyone. Thanks for
night.
listening. Appreciate
Bye-bye.
your attention.
Have a
See you
great
later,
future
Bobby.
now. Thanks, Bobby.
Thank you.